Return to Dark Tower. This is a remake of the beloved classic. I backed this project on Kickstarter when it originally came out. Then the game showed up on my doorstep maybe a couple of weeks ago, and I finally had the time to play. It is a game that you can play competitive or cooperative. It also works in solitaire, and that is how I played it. I played the cooperative version, running 2 characters, and the game works perfectly well that way. Now, the game is a remake, again, of the original, of the classic Dark Tower, which I have right there. However, what drove me to Return to Dark Tower was not nostalgia value, because I didn't play the original game back then. I didn't play when I was a kid. I played in the 2010s because as somebody who's interested in the history of games, I knew it was important, so I tracked down a copy and I played it as an adult. And I enjoyed it historically, mainly, of course, by the 2010s. It looked pretty rudimentary. The process you had to go through to learn how to operate the original tower, again, by now, not so great. But I was very excited about a remake, a new version. And so here we have it. We have the new version, which is, of course, logistically a lot more advanced and smooth. Also, it plays with a companion app that you can download for free, and I already got here started and ready to go. So, it looks in general very similar to the original game. We turn on the tower, and it makes the nice old school noise. One difference is that it has these sections here that can be removed. But by the way, I'm not going to tell you too much about some of the secrets of the tower, some of the things that the tower does, but I want to give you a general sense of gameplay. So when you want to start a new game, you press, get what? Start a new game on the app, turn on the tower. I did that. There you go. And it does its thing. Again, with these lovely old school noises. Ah, the blender. You gotta be patient. I'm giving you the real experience here, okay? Ominous. It's pretty cool. Come on. I guess we're ready to go. Yes. Now, we're gonna choose if we want to play competitive or cooperative. Cooperative it is. So we continue. 2 players, because that's what solitaire gamers do. Now, we're gonna have a number of possible main goals. The general idea is that each game you will complete a main goal, and that will allow the final villain to emerge. And here there are several possible main goals. And suppose that we decide, what's happening here? Come on, button. Well, I guess we go this way instead. Oh, a lot more responsive. And suppose that we decide that this is going to be our main goal. 3 dungeons. Oh, dungeons are tough. Let's do this one instead. There we go. Destroying magic relics. So we select that as the main goal. And then we select a main villain. So as you can see, there's going to be a lot of variety there with different goals and different villains. And then we have monsters of different levels, level 2, level 3, and level 4. For each category, we choose one, and they specialize in different things. What really matters here is, again, the level, 2, 3, or 4, and the keywords that they have here, because different kind of effects may apply or not apply to them. There's a thing called the advantage system, so you may get an advantage against humanoids, against creatures with melee or stealth. So basically, you can make the game easier or harder if you choose characters that specialize in certain things, and then you choose monsters that have those keywords, or vice versa. You can make it harder or easier based on that, or you can go random. Suppose here, for example, that I decide for level 1, I want to add the Shadow Wolves. For level 3, I'm going to choose the Frost Troll. For level 4, I'm going to choose the Striga. And that's how you set up the game. You chose your mode, main goal and adversary, and the foes. Once the game starts, and here if we continue, will give us a sense of how to finish setup, which we don't necessarily need to do right now, but something is important is the idea of these skulls. They will go on the board. As you can see, the instructions told me to place 2 skulls on each bazaar and on each sanctuary. And we set up the board at the beginning, placing these plastic buildings in their spaces. We have sanctuary, villages, citadels, and bazaars. Again, what was it? Bazaars and sanctuaries. There you go. Now, one thing, of course, is the beauty of the centerpiece. When you are playing the game Solitaire, the beauty of the centerpiece, however, gets in the way. I mean, literally, because it needs to reach behind it. So when you play Solitaire, you're gonna get up a lot and maybe even walk around the table to handle things that happen on the other side. And so we set up this part, and then we're gonna use the app, and it will tell us where to place the initial monsters, and so on and so forth. As for also, the board is divided into 4 kingdoms, marked as south, west, east, and north on the other side, which is good when the app tells us where to place stuff. This way we can do it easily. And then we have our heroes. These are the 2 that I like to play with. I know one does magic, one does brutal beating. So the tank and the magic user. How original of me. I don't know. I may be basic, but this is the team that I like. Now, each hero has a unique advantage called the banner advantage. And then the player, it really has a nice turn structure here that really is good at reminding you of what happens. Unique abilities for that hero printed already on the player aid. A tile that changes based on where the hero starts. So, for example, if the hero starts in the south, they get that tile. If the hero starts in the west, they get that tile, which gives you advantages in different locations. Each hero has some abilities that may be unlocked by spending 5 spirits when you are in a sanctuary and in a citadel, and these are new abilities that you get. Then we have space for corruptions. Generally speaking, when you need to pay a cost in the game instructs you to pay a cost and you can't pay it, you take a corruption from a deck of cards. The corruption goes there, which is already annoying because it has negative effects. What's worse is that if you have 2 of them and you would need to take a third, you lose the game. That's one of the conditions for losing the game. Also, there's a bit of this pandemic feel, as many game effects will place skulls in different buildings on the board. If a building has 3 skulls and you would need to place a 4th, the building and the skulls are removed from the game. This is particularly bad, more from the skulls than for the building, I would say. Because the skulls also are a timer, meaning that when, if you would have to place a skull on the board and you can't, you also lose the game, and that's that little pandemic element. Also, you have 6 turns rounds that are called months, and if you cannot complete your main mission by then, you lose the game. Again, your mission is first to complete the goal that you selected, which will place the villain on the board, and finally to add the villain to the board. So, players will alternate taking turns, and during a turn, again, first they get the advantage indicated in the banner phase. For example, the Brutal Warlord automatically recruits 5 soldiers every turn. You have to think that your heroes are going around with this large number of soldiers that will get slaughtered all the time. There's also another currency, which is spirit, which is used to pay for different kinds of advantages. So start of a turn, you get your banner advantage. For example, this other character here gets a spirit every turn. Then in the middle of the turn, you can move and or perform an heroic action and or reinforce. You can do these in any order. You can even break up movement in different sections. So you move some, do one of these things, move some more, do this, or move some, do these 2 things in any order, in the same location, move again. Very, very flexible turn structure. So, as for the heroic actions, one heroic action is simply to move to a spot and to cleanse it. So you remove all skulls from your place and they go back to the supply. This is important. You can also battle a foe in your area if there is one. Well, you can either or. The heroic actions are cleanse, battle, or quest. So if instead of cleansing you decide to battle, you will go in the app. I'm not going to go through the entire process, but basically this system will generate cards. So you click on it and they're basically negative effect cards that you have to go through. If you go through all of them, you defeat the enemy and the enemy is removed. And those effects may be like lose an item, lose warriors, lose spirit. You always have to lose something. Drop extra skulls in the tower. And remember, that may make you lose the game. Now, as I was saying, there is such a thing as the advantage system. So when I'm fighting, I check my board, my items that I may have, and I see if they give me advantages that I can apply in the current situation. For example, I'm fighting against a melee monster there, a melee humanoid. This character has +1 in melee, so that's good. I got 1 advantage. Plus wild advantage, that means any advantage, so I got 2. Oh, I have a sword. So I have a total of 3 melee advantage that I can use against that monster. If I was fighting there, my champion of the south gets +2 wild advantages in deserts. So that's an example of how you will have, hopefully, a number of advantages. Because when you draw a card, the card tells you the effects, say lose 10 warriors. But you can click on it on the card, since it's a digital card represented in the app. The digital card change a lot more easily than a material card does. Meaning I can spend an advantage to click on the card and reduce its effects. Suppose that I need to defeat 3 cards to kill the Frost Troll. The first card says lose 15 warriors. I have 5 advantages, remember? I click on the card once, using 1 and being left with 4. And now the card says lose 5. I click on it again, it says no losses. I'm good. I spend 2 of my advantages, I go to the next card. Maybe the penalty is not too bad. I say okay. I accept it as is, and you go through a 3rd card, which is terrible, and I decide to spend my remaining advantages. So that's the interesting thing about this game, that it really uses the companion app to do something that real cards don't do. I think that's a smart integration there. And so before you encounter a monster, start a quest or a dungeon or things like that, you'll probably want to have some advantages that are relevant to that. So for battling, that's the idea. You will go through a number of cards, accept the penalties, possibly reducing them with advantages. If you can't pay for the penalty given to you by a card, you take a corruption, and that's how you battle. Quest, well, the quest will be described in the app, and they will be kind of self-explanatory, like go to a spot and use a certain resource, and that's it for that. And then we have, of course, the reinforce action, which is, again, things that you can do in these buildings to collect different kinds of resources. And the easiest thing is if I show you here, the player aid is very well done, reminding you that each location where you can collect stuff has 2 basic advantages, one to get for free and one that you get by spending spirit points. Say, for example, in the Citadel, I gain potions, which is a bit of a random thing. I just draw a card from the potion deck and you get what you get. And sometimes it's useless, sometimes it's a little more useless than that. I'm too cynical, sometimes it's okay. Or you can gain a virtue, which is that, unlocking those abilities. Everybody starts with 3 locked abilities. If you're in the sanctuary, you gain a free spirit, or if you spend 5, you remove your corruption. That can be a game saver. In the village, I can recruit 6 soldiers, or I can recruit 12. Remember, monsters will constantly drain those, and if you don't have enough to pay for a penalty given to you by a combat card, booyah, corruption. In the bazaar, I can gain a free gear, and they're not bad. Those gears, they're okay. But of course, what's even better is the treasures. But in the bazaar, to collect a treasure, I need to have to spend 2 spirit, and there is a number of treasures that will be available. The number may change based on game effects, and they are a lot better, including the fact that they give you those delightful, those delicious advantages that can be added to what you already have. Important, at the end of the turn, once you're done with your move and or heroic action and or reinforcing, you will, to signal the end of the turn, to let the tower know that you're done, you will drop a cube in the tower. And that may or may not unlock events here. Other stuff may happen. Again, these things may be removed if the tower instructs you. A lot of stuff may happen. I'm not going to give you any spoilers. Also, the beauty is that so much stuff can happen. I can't really, in any case, give you a sense. But trust me, there's a variety of events that really make the tower act like a game master, like a narrator, like a dungeon master, regulating the movement, arrival, behavior of a large number of enemies. Dungeons are discovered, and there's a procedure, I will not tell you what it is, to complete a dungeon. A lot of different things, which is precisely what we like these days with story-driven games, that they give us the sense that we're exploring a detailed and vivid story world. So, go around doing adventures until hopefully you complete your main goal, and then the main enemy materializes. What is cool about that is that, remember, you use advantages to reduce the damage the cards will give you. A card that says lose 15 heroes, soldiers, spend an advantage. Now the card says lose 5 or lose 0. The final boss is really tough. It's really tough. And basically it's assumed that for you to be able to defeat the final boss, which shows up that you complete your main goal, you will need to attack it multiple times. So you'll go in, you'll spend some advantages and get some penalties just to reduce their cards, because the improvements on their cards that you buy using advantages stay. So I attack the villain, and I got slaughtered. I take a corruption, but I reduce their cards, and then I retreat. In the final boss, you don't have to go through every card. You can choose to see a bunch, take a bunch of penalties, improve your chances by adding advantages to those, and then retreat. And so you attack it, you weaken their deck a little bit. The app will tell you where they go next. The villain doesn't like to stay in the same spot, so the heroes are now rushing to go somewhere else. They attack the villain again, take some punishment probably, oopsie daisy, take some punishment probably, but they weaken their digital deck, and so on and so forth, until hopefully you're able to defeat the villain, in which case you win the game. A lot of other circumstances happen, which I described earlier, and you win the game, and the power of the Dark Tower will reign supreme. So, return to Dark Tower. I'm not gonna compare it a lot with the original game, which again I play mainly for historical reasons. Of course, it's smoother. Of course, the app is more intuitive. Of course, the app offers more options. There's more stuff going on. But you knew that. And if you're buying the game for nostalgia reasons, well, you don't really need a review, because the nostalgia is good enough to motivate you. Rather, my question, my assessment is, how does this game fare as a 21st century fantasy adventure game with a cooperative main spirit and with a competitive option? I think it does pretty good. I think it does well. It's a fun fantasy quest type adventure game. Now, there is a paradox in that, of course, the centerpiece, which is such an important element of the experience, is not the most efficient, is not the most logistically efficient game, especially game piece, especially if you're playing the game solitaire like I did. Because there's just stuff on the other side that you don't see quite as well. I guess it can be cooperative. Hey, Sam, can you tell me what's there? Where's the frost troll exactly? That kind of stuff. Also, I try to avoid spoilers, and it's not a spoiler that what I'm gonna say next, because it is in the rule book that you drop those skulls in the tower, and from time to time they pop out and they drop in different parts of the board, which is fun to see. It's a little less fun to run after them because sometimes they fall from on high and they bounce and they just bounce off the table, and then I have to run around and go and fight the little skull. Luckily enough, I don't have like a carpet here, but if you're playing with little kids or with pets around, careful because your cat or your dog may eat one of those skulls if they're faster than you. Again, it's just logistically a little strange or not ideal. I almost thought maybe if the board had ridges to avoid that bouncing off the board and off the table, but the way they bounce, I don't know that would have helped. That is to say, I played the game Solitaire and I enjoyed it, I just had to walk around and get up a lot more than I do with games of this kind. But again, the presence with the lights going up and the weird noises that come out, that is fun. That is part of the experience. Even not having an attachment to the original game, emotionally speaking, it was still fun to see that old school approach, that old school aesthetic, especially when it comes to the weird video game kind of noises. Now, as the game itself, it's a fun cooperative adventure game. It has a little bit of that pandemic feel in that you have to keep spending actions and cleansing the board so that you don't run out of skulls. The buildings don't explode, you don't have outbreaks. But again, most importantly is that non running out of skulls. And you think like, oh, I got 2 more, so I'm good. But being just 1 skull ahead is not enough because then an effect pops out of nowhere and says draw 4 skulls in the tower, and you lose the game, and that's not what you want to have. So the skull economy is extremely important, and the advantage economy is extremely important. Basically, it really captures the sense of fantasy role-playing games as we have known them mainly, which is beef up, become stronger, gain all the awesome treasures and superpowers, and then go and kick the big monster's butt. That's the general idea, because you will be trying to accomplish a main goal, which unlocks the encounter with the final boss. But well, first, in some cases, you can't rush to that. And in any case, you shouldn't do that. You have to find the balance between working towards that goal and gaining enough advantages and treasures and potions and other stuff so that then you can actually face the confrontation. If the final monster shows up too early and you still have to recruit a lot of people and find weapons, that's not good either. So you have a nice little balancing act that you need to perform there, which of course is an interesting challenge. And the actions that you perform, go to the sanctuary, face a dungeon, go and recruit villagers. They really have a strong thematic feel. I really enjoyed that. You can feel there's a certain Eurogame element to it, in the fact that you just, collect this, spend soldiers, basically, spend this, spend that. But that's at the core of every game, of course. They're just games in which I would say that the economic element is maybe disguised a little bit more. Well, here you still have a little bit of that economic management element. It still feels very thematic, very story-oriented. And that is definitely thanks to the huge variety that you have here. You have a nice variety of monsters. Because, of course, at first sight, it just looks like what defines the monster are just the keywords, and in terms of the advantages that you're acquiring and spending, that is it. But the app makes them behave in different ways, and so the orcs and the wolves and the brigands and these other monsters, they do act in different ways. They do create different situations. The villain, even before manifesting itself on the board, will create different kinds of events. And there's also this fun sense that from time to time, the app tells you they heard a rumor about a certain action that may occur around the sanctuary or in the western provinces. And that's fun because, well, first you can plan around, so more strategy, and it creates that ominous feel of an impending catastrophe. So there is a nice economic element that does not go, in my opinion, my experience, in my feeling, against the thematic, the story-driven element. I mean, if I'm gonna play a game with the ginormous tower of dark plastic on the board, it's because I want to experience a fantasy quest. And I think the game does that very well. Again, the variety from game to game, and within each game, with different monsters doing different things, interacting differently, There is a random element, of course, when it comes to combat. I may draw a good card, one that I'm ready to face, or a card that I'm not, and then I take a corruption. But it's one of those games in which I have that feel of what I call impartial luck. Like there is enough luck that overall a crazy good card and a crazy bad card will tend to even themselves out. A random element one way will tend to be balanced by a random element in the other direction, because there is enough luck, each in small installments, that you feel that overall a good gameplay is still rewarded. And there's an element of, there's luck, fine, but there is an element of push your luck. I can try now, or try to beef up for 2 more rounds before I try to do that quest or that task. So what you have here is an economic element, a push your luck element, and a very rich, very varied theme that they come together. They come together in a fantasy adventure that has a certain epic scope, and yet you can play it in under 2 hours. And again, you can play solitaire. And these days, at least with my busy lifestyle, that's a huge advantage, because I have a fantasy quest, a fantasy epic adventure that I can play in an evening anytime when no one is around, and that's great. So I'm definitely happy that I back returned to Dark Tower. I'm very pleased with the product. Again, I do have to run around the table quite a bit to pick up skulls and things, but other than that, this is a really fun and solid adventure game.